What's going on, guys? And welcome back to the ShiftEQ.Podcast with Alan Kay. Today's episode is going to highlight one of the more impactful segments of my life for which I learned a lot about physical training. At the very least, physical training is like one of the bare minimum things I learned, which is my 13 years in the Navy. And I wanted to bring a guest along to provide perspective on that physical standards and the exercising that comes along with the Navy. So welcome, guys, and welcome my really good friend, David Brandenburg, who's currently still in the Navy as a recruiter out there in Washington. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, Bremerton, Port Orchard, Washington area.
Okay, and then right now you are the command fitness leader for your command, correct?
Yes, I'm one of them, mainly for my division, but I am one of the command fitness leaders for the command, yeah.
Okay, and then real quickly before we go into that, what is a command fitness leader and what is your responsibility with that role?
So essentially, the command fitness leader is in charge of running the yearly physical readiness test, or PRT. They also monitor body fat and do height and weight checks with the sailors in the division or in the command. We can be utilized to run PT for the command whenever needed. And also, if we have sailors that are struggling to make height and weight, we can do what's called FEP, so Fitness Enhancement Program, and just to help them kind of get back on track. So we're not really personal trainers, but we do get some training from the Navy and the ability to be that subject matter expert for the division and command level.
Outstanding. And before I actually get into this episode and start talking about just Navy PT, Navy standards, and how much I dislike them, and we'll go into that. David, I did want to congratulate you on getting that LPO of the Year award for your command, and I'm very proud of you. Like, I remember meeting you on my time recruiting in Vegas, seeing as an MC2 Brandenburg, and the influence you had and the leader that you had. So it's been pretty amazing to watch you, just even if it's through social media, grow into the leader that you are. And it's great that you're being recognized for it.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I've utilized you and so many others to kind of motivate me to be better every day. So, I can't say that I do it on my own. It takes a tribe to get where we want to go. I really believe in that. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that feedback, too. I really do appreciate that. So let's get into this, right? So we just kind of went over your role into what you are responsible for with regard to the fitness program. You talk about the PRT. Now, can you, for the listeners and for the viewers that are not part of the military, that probably have this image of what physical fitness is like for the military, for the Navy, what would you say? If I were to ask you, like, what are the basic standards? What are the things you got to be able to do? Big picture wise, what does the Navy require amongst their sailors to be physically fit?
So it's honestly changed a lot. I've been in almost 17 years, and this test has changed multiple times. But as it sits right now, we're looking at a 2-minute push-up test. So 2 minutes of push-ups, as many as you can do. Generally, what we see, especially for the younger guys and girls, is probably around 40 to 60, I would say, which, to be honest, is a struggle for most. And I'm sure we'll kind of cover that as we talk today. And then we got rid of sit-ups out of the test. So now our core test is a forearm plank, which honestly has changed the game, I think, in a good way. It has been a challenge for a lot of sailors just because you start the test with the push-ups, you go right into that timed forearm plank, and you don't realize how long you're really planking for. So that it's been a better test of core strength, I think, than the sit-ups were. And then we finish with the tried and true 1.5 miles, but you do have the alternate options of a 2,000 meter row, which is a little harder than people think. And then the swim test, which has always been probably one of the more difficult cardio options. And then the bike, which don't even get me started on the bike. But that tends to be the basic sailor option across the board is the bike because it makes it a little easier for you. So
So the row, I think the row in the swim test would. So the 2,000-meter row, is that underneath a certain time?
It is. Everything for time, obviously, is graded by your age. So if you look into our standards manual, and I don't know them all off the top of my head, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but the big area we see most people in is probably the 17 to 21 range
For the row.
and the test scores are substantially high. I mean, you have to push yourself at that age to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that time to row, I think for my age, I'm 35 now, it was still around 8 something minutes, which you have to be efficient, obviously, and know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't slack off either. And I did like that they added the row as an option. Felt like it was a better test of cardio if you weren't going to run.
Right. And I just want to highlight, because the 1.5 miles I don't think is that challenging, but I know a lot of people have used the alternatives with regards to, instead of having to run in the 1.5 miles, like they'll do an elliptical. I think an elliptical was offered when I was in. We're talking about the swim test and the row. And from what I understand, like you just said, the swim test and the row is actually a little bit more challenging than people give it credit for. But for the bike, is that also a time thing? Or I remember for a little bit, real quickly, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you did an alternative towards regular 1.5 miles, they would actually like measure how many calories you burned like on the machines, right? Instead, can you go into that as well real quickly?
So for the bike, there's a couple different bikes that are authorized, and they have to be done on those authorized machines for it to count, right? So basically, we have them put in their weight, and then they go for a time. So generally, it's about 14 minutes, because at 12 minutes, the machine automatically kicks into a cool down mode, right? So at the 12-minute mark, we check their calories. And then we have a calculator. There's an app on your phone and all that stuff now. So if people want to go check it out, it's official Navy PRT, and they can kind of see what the test would consist of. But they put in the machine that they're on, they put in their calories, and it equates in some algorithm out to a run time. It's tough because for a sailor that weighs a lot more, it makes it a little easier. They have to burn less calories. I've done the bike before, and being a smaller guy, I had to push it. So it can be a challenge if someone's really trying to push themselves, but it really tends to be the option people go to because they know that, hey, I don't have to really exert that much energy and I can pass, which is another conversation I'm sure we'll get into in itself, right? It's just that word pass.
Right. Yeah, because there's a genuine difference between passing a standard and actually being physically fit, as we all know. And I don't always believe that your physical fitness or your physical readiness, for that matter, should be determined by numbers on a scale based off of height that you exhibit, based off of whatever. I mean, I remember certain people failing to height and weight and then getting measured at right at the border of their neck and waist. But they took their shirt off and they have the most ripped 8-pack that I have ever seen in my life. And then you got Chief Joe Schmo, who eats 4 donuts a day, ginormous mustache. He just happens to have a fat neck, right? He is 10% body fat somehow, some way. But The guy that he's measuring is 22 with an 8-pack. And it just never made sense to me based off of that. In your point, so real quickly, can you also go over, before I go too far into that rant, can you kind of go over like the height weight standard, and then what happens if you don't meet that height weight?
Yeah, so this has also changed a lot, even probably from when you were in. It's been a while. So it used to be just a height and weight standard based on a chart, right? And I don't think they've updated this chart since probably like the 60s, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So some of these height and weights probably could be reevaluated a little bit to be more realistic to where we're at right now. But if a sailor doesn't pass, basic height and weight, which is pretty common, right? We'll just be honest. Then you're going to go into a body fat measurement. So we have a standard. It used to be 22%. Was the flat line for males, right? So, and I'll just use males specifically. but there is obviously a set for females as well. But for males, it was 22%. And, if you missed your weight, so we basically took a measurement just under the Adam's apple, a measurement around your navel, and that was it. Like, if you didn't make it, you didn't make it. And like you were saying, I even had this happen to me a couple times when my first child was being born. I gained some weight, man. And so it was like, I still was nowhere near what some of the people I worked with, but I noticed that someone could outweigh me by 30, 40 pounds. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then they would have a 18 or 19 inch neck. And I've always had a pretty small neck. So I go get measured and I'm right in that line, right? I'm right at that 22% because the way that we take the measurement and put it into a circumference value on our chart in the manual, it's not necessarily the best system to do it, right? Especially when you have someone with a 19-inch neck being 18% body fat and me with a 15-inch neck and, weighing less than this person by 30, 40 pounds, I'm automatically 22%. I'm right on that line. As a fitness leader, which, is embarrassing. You're just like, wow, I'm borderline about to fail and I'm running PT every day. So they did update that a couple of years ago. So now what we do is a single site measurement. So they go at the top of your hip bone, and every single person, this falls a little different, right? It's the iliac crest is what they call it. So we have them basically take their thumb. I always have them go from the top of the rib cage down to the top part of that hip bone. And you kind of have to watch people. They like to throw a different location in there every once in a while. But you get that measurement. If they fall under 39 inches, they pass. Good to go. Now, if they still are 39 or higher, then we do the old school height, the neck, the waist measurement. For better, for worse, right?
39 inches. That's it.
39 inches.
So you can be like a 5'4" sailor that just could be thick.
Thickums.
As long as you're below 39 inches at that mark, you pass.
That's not healthy.
That is bizarre. And this is where I start having, I take a lot of issue with the Navy PRT standards. And I always have, and I always will until they fix it. Like, I view military as a position of leadership, especially out in the civilian world and out in the fighting world in all reality. And when you exhibit a 39-inch waist at like as a 5'4" person, right? And I'm just using that so that you get a perspective of dimensions. Like, where is that anywhere near healthy? Where is that a position of leadership? And like, where is that? Like, yeah, where is that? Like, why do we approve that? And why do we say that it's okay? I guess, David, in your opinion, what do you think about these standards that we're talking about with height, weight, body fat, the whole 9 yards?
It's tough, right? Like, I know that there has to be a balance, and that's I think where I have a hard time with it is, and I'm not speaking as a recruiter or anything like that. This is just my personal opinion, but I know that there has to be a balance because at the end of the day, the military has to get a certain number of people, and right now, as a nation, the military is struggling bringing people in for various reasons. But I also think that we've lowered that bar, right? Mm-hmm. And we've allowed, what society has allowed everyone to kind of become to be, well, this is normal now. And instead of holding, soldiers, sailors, Marines, whoever, to a standard, and I will say every branch kind of runs it a little differently. I have a brother that's a Marine, and they definitely follow the fitness model a lot higher than, the Navy does. It's more important to them. It weighs more into your advancement. It weighs more into ranking you amongst your peers. And I wish that the Navy was like that, but we're just not. And depending on the community you're a part of, I mean, if you're in special warfare or something like that, your PT standards are going to mean something. But living up here, I'm close to a submarine base. And I will tell you right now, most submariners, they don't follow that rule. But they're so pivotal to the Navy for what they do that it's like, yes, they're overweight. Yes, they're a liability, but we need them. So we'll kind of push it through or push it under the rug. And I don't, I can imagine you've seen this when you were in, but the higher rank you are, the it's easier to sweep it under the rug, right? You don't want to make the higher leadership position look bad. So it's like, hey, brother, sister, chief, or whatever, let's kind of push this under there and keep you going. And I kind of get it from both angles. I try to be, even keel on it, but at the same time, it kind of worries me moving forward, I think, as to where we're headed as a military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you keep on talking about that, which is the lowering of standards. It's been a while since I've recruited, and because I got out 2018. How you mentioned that the recruiting numbers are getting lower and lower. Can you kind of go into that real quickly? What the face of recruiting is like right now with military entry?
So in just the last couple of years, I've seen quite a shift because COVID presented a lot of challenges, obviously. And I think that goes for any employer, right? Not being able to see people face to face, not being able to get people in the office or into a hiring, process. Weight's a huge one. We recruit a ton of high school kids, and I'll be honest, man, like these kids can't run or do push-ups for shit. They can't. And we're talking 17, 18-year-old kids. And yes, at 35, I love to work out, right? It's a passion of mine, but I still should not beat these kids in everything that we do. And, it's hard because the academic side of it's rough. The social politics of how things are in the world right now make it a challenge. The military is just not viewed the same way we used to be viewed. And I heard someone the other day talk about, the way people go into jobs now is more so what kind of value does it bring to you? And if these kids don't see a value or regular people don't see a value in being a part of this organization, they're just not going to do it. You can throw money, you can throw whatever at them, but we're getting past the point where people are just doing something because it pays well. And more so, I want to do this. I want to be a part of this because it brings value to my life. I think that's why things like podcasts and influencing and all that is just so big now, because people want to do something that they feel like they're making a difference somewhere, and it brings value to them and to somebody else. But we just don't see it anymore. And, the PT side of it, and I'm glad we're having this discussion today, because in January, the Navy is starting a new program where they're going to allow people to go to boot camp and basically be in like a fitness enhancement program before they start boot camp. But they will be able to go there at 20. So for males, it's 26.1 to 32% body fat. And for females, it's 36.1 to 42% body fat. And basically they get to be at boot camp PTing and working on nutrition until they hit the 26 and 36 maxes. Then they can actually start boot camp. But it's like, holy cow, 42% for a female. Like, that's going to be very difficult for most women to get down to that percentage. How long are they going to be there?
42. That's almost half of your body is fat. Like, that's bizarre to me.
It's crazy.
I guess with everything that you just mentioned, I guess if people initially aren't making weight to begin with, and that's just the whole cultural aspect of it, people don't respect the military like they used to, just what you said, and it's not viewed as something that is admirable or that of service anymore. I guess by default, if you still need a standard to have people in there, then yeah, by default, you are going to reduce your standards. Like, how do I guess, how do I blame the Navy for reducing that? But I'm going to play devil's advocate here, of course. But I would say that the more that we lower the standard for physical standards, the less desirable it is to achieve that achievement, to say that you're part of the Navy, that you're part of something. Like when I joined, it meant something. And when I still say that I served, it still means something.
Oh, yeah.
But I noticed that when I say that amongst people in this generation, the younger 20-year-olds, and yeah, you just alluded to it. That's like, all right, cool. Okay, boomer. Like, that's pretty much what I get told. And it doesn't hold the same weight, and they didn't. But I also noticed they haven't, this generation hasn't really experienced anything as significant. I remember watching 9/11 happen. I remember all the different things that Saddam Hussein in the 90s and the whole 9 yards. And I remember that meaning something by the time I joined the Navy. You joined around the same time as I did. So I know it kind of fits the same. And I guess this generation just hasn't experienced that. So what I'm pretty much trying to say here as a big picture, I do get now why we would have lower standards. I don't agree with them, but I don't, I don't really particularly say that.
It's tough.
Yeah. Well, with everything that we're being said, I actually do agree. I do want to take it back where you mentioned the boot camp. I actually agree with allowing people to join boot camp while being within range of getting, within standard. Because for me, when I joined boot camp, I was that guy that was starving myself. I remember being in the hotel treadmill with one of those sweatsuits on because I was barely at the cusp of getting weighed in. And I definitely, for like the last week, damn near starved myself just so I'd get into boot camp. But I joined boot camp at about 167 pounds. When I got out of boot camp 6.5 weeks later, I graduated at 139 pounds. And I was just the skinniest thing in the world. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because in boot camp, they only feed you 3 times a day. They feed you at when they want to feed. There's no snacking. There's no alcohol. There's nothing else and it's just boot camp. So I actually enjoy that. Enjoy that aspect of it because I think when you actually show people how to eat squarely, how to work out regularly, sometimes it's that action that ends up showing them and gives them the momentum to carry that lifestyle.
True. And I think that's where this new program is going to benefit people, especially for, I put a couple people in that it took them months and months and months. Right. And while at the same time, you're being bombarded with maybe what mom and dad eat every day, maybe what your wife and kids eat every day. You're being bombarded with your fast food job, especially for the young guys and girls. And so it's like, I get where putting them in an isolated environment like that, is it more feasible that they're probably going to drop those percentages? Oh yeah. Because now we can monitor everything you're eating. We can make sure you're working out, and it doesn't have to be crazy stuff. It can just be the basic Navy PT, which I'm sure we'll get into how I feel about that too. But it kind of puts them in an isolated environment where I think they can really focus and have those outside distractions taken away. So I do understand the reason behind it. Will someone be willing to want to be in boot camp for as long as it takes to get there? I don't know. We'll see how many people actually go on board. But I think giving the people an opportunity to do that, it's important.
Yeah. And you alluded to that correctly where, sometimes you're just a product of your environment. Like sometimes, mom and dad have been programmed to eat incorrectly and eat nothing but processed food. So yeah, the only way that you can actually get within standard is to get out of that programming and be shown a different way. And you present a lot of, things that I guess I kind of ignore at the moment. And it's really easier to be on this side of it when you can, for me, when I can afford regular things at Sprouts or regular things at Whole Foods and shop, it's really easy for me to say, oh, why don't people do that? But then, you just said there's like these, people that really don't have that opportunity to afford those kind of foods, let alone the fact, are they even aware on how to make food for themselves because they just don't know any better. So,
yeah. And, there's every fad diet in the world. I mean, you watch TV for any length of time during the day and you're going to see Golo and Noom and all these just random fitness things coming at you all the time. And so for someone who doesn't know where to start, like there's too many options at times, I think, that people are like, well, I'm going to go to Weight Watchers. I'm going to go here. And all of them seem to work for somebody. But, I think I had this discussion with you before where it was like, what are you eating or what are you doing? And you're like, well, this is what I do. However, I don't want to push you down that same road because that may not be what you need, right? It may not be what your goal is. My goal is not necessarily to go do a figure competition and moonwalk on the stage like you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have those moves anyway. But, I really, I don't necessarily need to have a six pack, but I want to be fit. I want to know that I can push myself. I like to do some extreme stuff. I want to get into some ultra running and different things like that just to see if I'm capable of it. But I also work out because I want my kids to have a good example. And as they, get older and I get older, I don't want to be that dad that's like, man, I would love to go outside and play with you, but I can't breathe. I can't move. So I kind of switched my focus to just, I want to be fit to be, persistent in life with my kids and whatever I need to do. Not so much to win something, but just to be functional, as I get older. And I hope that some of these programs change the mentality of people coming in to think that way. I don't expect every person who joins to be at a Navy SEAL level. Like, it's just not realistic. And, you and I have been in and been on different platforms and things like that. You don't have the means if you're a submariner to really do a lot. But hey, we can teach you ways to do a lot with little or with body weight.
Man, sorry, I was not expecting that was golden, man. Oh my god, yeah, mic drop, man. Holy shit, that was great. Yeah, well, all right. So you alluded to something. You want to be fit. You want to be functionally fit, and that's your goal, and that's your intention every single time you work out, which is beautiful, right? And that plays into a lot for me because for me, I just what you said, like I want to be an example for my children. I want them to be like, oh, dad takes care of himself. And as an overall person in any industry, when you have an image that looks like you take care of yourself, that in of itself exudes leadership just by default. And I've noticed that the more fit I got, the more people just understand what, the message that you have and kind of take your guide in that leadership just by default. Now, with that being said, and that you having your fitness goals and you setting a foundation for fitness, does the Navy standard, the current Navy standard, and the current Navy culture promote you to do that just by following their guidelines? Or do you constantly feel like you have to do a little bit more to actually meet your fitness expectations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to just come out and say it, no. Right? And these are, again, my opinions for anyone listening out there. Like, these are my opinions. It comes down to, at no point in my Navy career have I felt like the Navy has given me just this blueprint of fitness success where I'm just going to be like this monster. It's just, it's never been a thing. And I'm sure you noticed this when you were in, there's always a new campaign, right? Like there was the NOFs where it was like, hey, we're going to take the type of world that you work in or the community that you work in, and we're going to tailor your PT towards that specific area. Never worked. I don't feel like it did. Mm-hmm. I never saw it go anywhere. Then they had these bags of bands and different things like that. You know how many people I actually saw use those bands? Never. They were in the back closet of your command somewhere where someone probably just jacked it at some point that actually cared about the stuff inside that bag and kept it for themselves, right? It really depends on where you work. When I worked at Combat Camera, we had a a real culture of fitness there because of just the nature of what we were doing, right? We were out working with special operators. We were being utilized with, anti-piracy operations and different things like that. We had people going to dive school and to air crew school. So the level of person that usually was there understood that. And it was kind of a personal thing for them. Like, hey, when we PT together, like, we're going to push ourselves. We're going to, introduce things like CrossFit and TRX and all these other different fitness methodologies. But, you say the word CrossFit to anyone else in the Navy, and I mean, good Lord, like, don't do it. It's like cursing, you know what I mean? And so it's like, the problem is just the general Navy. This is what you do to be fit. And if you follow these guidelines, you'll be fit. I mean, will it work? Probably. If you're looking to squeak by and probably get a good low on your test, I mean, yeah, you can follow those programs. And are there ways to scale it up? Yes. But is it really something that's taught from boot camp on? No. PT is not really something even in our boot camp it really worries people when they go there. You look at the Marine Corps, and even the Army has kind of shifted from this, to be honest. But you look at the Marine Corps and people are terrified. It is a genuine, like, wow, I'm going to this place that's going to be rough and I'm going to get worked and dropped. And like, we don't have that culture. And obviously it's two different branches of service with two different missions, right? But I've put in people that are going for special warfare programs and they get to boot camp and they regress because they're going from working out, trying to earn that SEAL contract or that diver contract to now I'm in boot camp. I'm working out once a day. I'm eating pretty good. And, you're not swimming. You're not doing all those things that you're going to need to do to be effective when you get to BUDS or any of those places.
Oh, so you're saying, real quick, so you're saying those guys go in there in way better shape than before, and they actually lose shape, lose that intensity because of Navy boot camp.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought about
to a couple people that have gone through the program, and they go in at such a high level that they can usually make it through, right? But obviously the attrition rate of the pipeline, they're going down. You're already getting the best of the best as it is, right? But it's just that, that fear for a lot of them that they're like, man, I've worked so hard to get this contract. I've been running and swimming and doing all this. Like, when I get to boot camp, am I going to lose it? I worked so hard to get this contract. Like, am I going to regress and then this is going to be it? And then what's going to happen? And I just feel like we have to do a better job of, I want to say even at the recruiter level, right? It's on the recruiter to foster that standard. And, I make that clear to all of our guys. Like, hey, when we work out together, I'm going to make you work, safely. I don't want to hurt somebody. And, obviously it's an investment that the Navy's made, but like, I want you to go to boot camp and be like, man, this is easier than anything I ever did at my recruiting office, because now you've set that standard for yourself and what you're going to allow yourself to be when you get to boot camp. You're not going to be the person that says, what's my minimums? Oh, I only have to do 12 push-ups because I'm 33 years old. Cool. 12 push-ups and I'm done. Like, nah, man, 2 minutes of push-ups. Do 2 minutes. Even if you're wobbly and you're not actually doing anything, just push. Right. And we've lost that, I think.
It's crazy that there's the standard that it's crazy that the standard would bring someone down if they're excelling, and the standard would bring someone up to it if not doing anything, but they're still not even considered to be athletic or actually in shape. It's more like a better version of being sedentary, if anything. And so let's kind of put like a real specificity. I can't say that one. Real specificness as to what that looks like. So if you were to put in words what the basic Navy standard is for PT, what would that look like?
Oh man. Okay. Great question. It's actually kind of a tough one. I just use it from like what is expected of a command fitness leader, right? Like I'm getting
Okay.
ready to run group PT. What is expected? To be honest, for me, my true opinion is I'm expecting to set my PT standard to my lowest level. Who's my weakest sailor?
Mm.
And I have a real issue with that, and it's something I've struggled with. And I've been told before in the past, like, hey man, you can't do that. Hey, we're a little too intense there. You need to bring it down. Yeah. Oh, and that drives me nuts. You want to get me worked up? Yeah, just keep going down that road. But there's been multiple times where my fast runners are having to stay behind, right? Let's do a group run. It's the one thing I can't stand more than anything in the military is group runs, man. You want to talk about a way to hurt somebody, shin splints. Every time I've had issues with stuff like that is from group runs because you get your fast people having to run at the level of the slowest person and vice versa, And it's like we don't prioritize, and I've kind of come to believe that as a fitness trainer, as a coach, whatever you want to call yourself, your programming, I truly feel your programming should be tailored towards your best athlete with the ability to basically roll back, right, if you want to call it, or to accommodate, someone who's definitely not at that level. But if you program to your best athlete and you still make everything functional in a sense that you can make it harder or easier for whoever you need to, I feel like you bring the ones who are at a lower level up to a higher level, I think.
Right.
But you're not hurting your athletes at the same time. And group PT is probably the opposite of that. Most of the time you can do these approved stretches and these approved warm-up exercises, which make us look ridiculous, okay? High knees and jumping jacks and all that, which, cool, they've been around forever. But,
Yeah.
you do it out in public and people are like, what the hell are these guys doing out there?
Not only do out in public, do they still wear those yellow shirts and the bright yellow shirts and the bright blue shorts?
They changed it a little bit, so you still can. But we have a newer PT uniform that's all blue. It's actually a lot nicer. Okay. It's just got like the logo on the back, nothing else. Okay,
well, for the listeners that aren't aware, there was a good probably 10 or 15-year period where they're wearing those yellow shirts and blue shorts, and we looked like a glorified bunch of minions. And the same shape of body, too, like, because there's a lot of fat people in the Navy. And so we looked like minions in its entirety. And I would argue that minions looked like they were in better shape than half the people I saw in that kind of uniform. Because that shirt was not forgiving. It hugged onto every curve. And I remember seeing layers upon layers on other people's shirts because they were just so skin tight. And it was, even if you were ripped in that shirt, you were wearing a bright yellow shirt. And that just did not look right in any way, shape, or form.
No, it was never a good option. And they switched to an all blue option now, which it is nicer. It still kind of hugs your body. It's a New Balance uniform that they use. Okay. But it doesn't soak up the sweat as much, I guess. And it doesn't look as ridiculous. It's a little more low key.
I hate to say, but I think that's where it should start, though. Where we should definitely tailor a workout uniform that makes it look like we're going to work out, that actually makes it look like we're going to look badass. Like the Marines have that classic just green on green look, but it looks so badass. Like, yep, these guys are going to fuck some shit up, And I remember walking out in my stupid yellow fucking shirt and like being there like, the fuck am I going to do? Like let's scare some birds away when I run? Like, that, what the hell is this shirt meant to do? There's nothing practical about it.
It's rough. And they just started allowing people to take their own tennis shoes to boot camp too. So if they have something that they want to wear, like the old stuff we were issued, man, was just horrendous. Like these
New Balance,
heavy ass New Balance.
Yeah. They're fucking terrible. Yeah. And you know what? I remember going to boot camp, and then, although I lost all that weight, my standards of being physically fit for myself just went down completely, and just kind of goes with the culture.
Yeah.
With all of this being said, if you were to make changes, for it to actually be a program that enhances fitness, that enhances the culture towards being more fit and having a more active lifestyle, what are some of the changes, or what are some of the things that you would implement to promote that?
I think, man, it's getting people that are going to meet these young kids, or even just people that are joining later on in life early on, that already have a standard of what they want for the Navy to be, right? And that's at the recruiting level. I know that there's a lot of restrictions against us working people out because they get so worried about us hurting somebody, and I understand that. But at the same time, boot camp has to be a more physically demanding environment. We have to learn what we have to learn while we're there. I get it, 100%. But if we're not scaring people in a sense when it comes to the PT side of things, of like, man, what's it going to be like to just be worked all day? I'm going to get dropped. I'm going to beat my ass. Like, people join for that reason. We're crazy if we think that that's not why they join. People join because it's a challenge. Okay, it's something that you're not going to get in the regular world at Amazon. You're not going to get PT'd at Amazon, and it's a different world. And that's why people join it, is they want the structure. They want the challenge. And so it's like, give them the challenge, man. Like, and if they don't make it, send them home. Mm-hmm. Don't keep them there forever and just be like, well, eventually we'll get you through. Like, we have to set a standard of what we want to be. We're a military, not a business at the end, right? And then I think understanding, yes, there are communities and environments that we work, especially in the Navy, where it's like, we know that your fitness is going to be limited, right? Like, you're out to sea, it's tough. It is. And it doesn't matter if you're on an aircraft carrier. It doesn't matter if you're on a smaller ship or a submarine. But we have to do a better job of holding people accountable while you're out to sea, or holding people to a better standard of, hey, man, I haven't seen you in the gym in 6 months, and we've been gone for 6 months. Like, Get it together. Let's go. And I think it needs to weigh more in our advancement, in our evaluations. Like, for evals, they just ask you, hey, did you pass? Yeah, I passed my fitness test. Okay, so what separates you from someone who did an outstanding on their PT test at 30 years old, who ran their mile and a half in 9:30, than someone who barely made it but got a good low? You can't compare the two. There has to be deciding factors. And I know that we do this somewhat. So I guess I could say I'm not really changing a lot, but I just think there needs to be more push and focus on making fitness more of a priority, and not just, okay, it's a check in the box. And I think a buddy of mine I talked to this morning before I came on here, he was like, man, you need to bring that up. Like, it tends to be to the Navy more of a check in the box than an actual important thing that we grade people on, an important thing that we worry about our sailors being physically fit. Because as you know, if you're not dental or medical ready, man, they will blow you up to your command. Like, you didn't get your flu shot? Oh my God. Like, stand by. But, you didn't pass BCA, or, you did pretty crappy on your PRT. That's okay, man. Next cycle, you'll get it. Just go to FEP for a while. And it doesn't need to be like that. It needs to be held to that same standard, I think.
Yeah. Because a standard is really important, because if anybody can achieve it, you just alluded to it earlier, then nobody really wants it, and therefore nobody will strive for it. I think there's more to be said about, setting a high enough standard where it is achievable, but achieving it and maintaining it means something. You know, that's why you got someone like these high-end private golf courses where they charge out the wazoo for a membership, but these people love just being associated with it because it adds to their echelon. It adds to like their ego and who they are. And I think that if we promote that kind of a mindset with the Navy, and that might have to start it. That might have to start with your evaluations. That might have to start with, hey, not only are you going to do really well on your evaluation, you're going to do really well on your test, but maybe your physical standard needs to play, into that as well. Maybe a third of it. because there are, one of the things that I despise about the Navy, amongst a lot of things, but one of the things that I really despise about the Navy, especially when it comes to your physical standards, is that chiefs are supposed to be leaders, the E7 and above in the khaki. And I cannot tell you how many times we were in Navy group PTs, physical trainings, and I got this fat ass fucking chief that can't do any real exercise in the world, but because arm circles are somewhat approved on the Navy PT thing, we are out there doing 30 minutes of arm circles because that is the one exercise that he has fucking mastered, because he is so easy to fucking eating out all the time. So really easy to fucking put your hands out when you're always eating, and that's what we want to get led by. And everybody knows when you got this obese guy in a freaking yellow and blue minion looking outfit, there is nothing of leadership. There is nothing of real PT that's going on. And you know damn well when you're out there that you are wasting your time for an hour, hour and a half plus, not to mention all the other bullshit military things they have you do in PT gear, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense. Like I'm yelling the Sailor's Creed, stretching at 5:40 in the morning in this yellow shirt, and I'm not even awake. Like, why, bro? Stop.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've always had an issue with that, right? And it's always an area that's kind of weird because it's like, it's either the fat chief that's out there or even the officer, you know what I mean? And they're held to that same standard, let's be honest. Or, one thing I encountered a bunch when I was on the ship, when I was on an aircraft carrier, they just were never there. Hey guys, make sure at PT shit is mandatory. Where are you? Because you're not there. Oh, we just got stuff going on at the, back in the department. We can't make it. Why? You're there to set the example, right? Like, and I mean, I could say all the way up the chain. Like, if you're going to be the commanding officer of the ship, get out there and PT with your people. Like, I know that your work schedule is a little different than the rest of us, obviously at that level, but like, it speaks volumes to the young first year person that is like, why the hell am I out here at 5 a.m.? Like you said, this sucks. But when you got everyone out there, okay, it still sucks, but my leadership's out here working hard, or my leadership sets that example and is like, hey, we're going to leave today. We're going to get a good workout in, and then we're going to go home for the day. But we're going to push ourselves today. Like, I'm going to be out there putting in the work too. And that's just something I think that you don't find in a lot of places. And like you said, that's a huge disconnect between, the leadership and the subject matter experts and what they're supposed to be. And then the rest of us who we don't really have the voice necessarily to make that change. Or to set that standard, but we're expecting our leadership to do it, and they're not doing
it. Yeah, it's really unfortunate that that's actually the feeling of it, because that's what it was like when I was in there. It's like, you are telling me it's mandatory, you're telling me it's the standard, you're telling me that it's the most important thing, but you were not showing up, you were not in that standard, you were not anything. I remember being on watch one time, and one of the watch officers came down. He was so upset. He's like, they didn't weigh me right. They didn't take my measurements right. They're supposed to measure at the neck, and I was like, hey, sir, you ever think about just not being fat? And he just fucking lost his shit. Warrant officer, I'm not going to say his name, but I remember he just threw me out of the watch station. It's so stupid because I was supposed to stay there anyway. You can't throw me out, sir. Find a relief. Like, it's the truth. Like, what did you expect me to do? I'm not, I could have said it a little more subtly, but as a nuke, we're trained to just call people out for the truth for what it is. But the reality is true. Like, why are you going to sit there and complain about they didn't measure your waist right or measure your neck right? Like, just don't even make it close to begin with. But what you're saying is correct. There's the culture of leadership, even, and you mentioned it earlier, like when you're in a command where everybody is in shape, by default, everybody around you, you're going to kind of pick up that energy. You don't want to be the anchor of that group ever, especially as men and military. When you're in a chief's mess, or when you're in a wardroom where everybody around you is fat, it kind of allows you to be fat as well, because you're a product of everybody you hang out with, especially on a deployment. And so, I definitely see the people that get into the khakis, start getting bigger, start having more rules about not getting bigger.
Yeah.
And it definitely creates a disconnect. It definitely creates a disconnect. Are there any like interesting, there's got to be some interesting stories that you have that come to mind when it comes to like these PT, you're getting weighed in, or do you have any examples, anything that really comes to mind for you that,
I've had grown men cry because they were on their final failure. When I first came in, if you failed a certain number of PRT tests or your weigh-ins, you got kicked out of the Navy. And you don't get kicked out anymore. You just can't advance and you can't transfer. So eventually you'll kind of hit the end of whatever your contract is and be forced to go home. But I mean, you're talking about people that were up like 17, 18 years. And I was just a third class, E4, barely in the Navy, maybe 5, 6 years. And I'm just doing everything to the book, the way that I was trained to do it by the manual. And, obviously when it comes down to someone's career, you got to make sure you're doing stuff the right way because people are going to take you under the bus so quick. But I've had that happen where it's like someone's crying to me going like, man, if I fail this, what am I going to do? I got a family. And it's like, it's a shitty situation to be in, especially as a junior person when you're just like, man, I'm just trying to do my job. Like, and you don't want to ruin someone's career, but I'm a firm believer in the fact that PT is the one thing, or your weight and fitness is the one thing in the military you have control over. I can't control where I get stationed. I can't control what my mission set's going to be like, or how a deployment's going to go. But I can control that I'm going to eat the best I can, that I'm going to make time and prioritize time to work out. And as a leader, when I was on the ship, we used to do fitness competitions. We had a pull-up challenge, run challenges. We had a pull-up bar welded in our compartments, so that way, people could just stop what they're doing, jump on there, knock a couple pull-ups out. It created just an environment where people wanted to go do those things. People who had never PT'd before in their life wanted to come up in the TV studio and do workouts with us. And, my buddy Woody and I, we used to do that all the time. And it created a media department that wanted to be a part of that stuff. It wanted to go to the fitness events. And, when we came home from deployment, we're trying to push themselves in different ways. And, whether it was a future in the fitness industry or not, it didn't matter. We got people to want to move. We got them to want to be active. And there's just too many instances I can think of in my career where, someone's crying to me or like, oh, why am I here? They waited till it was too late. And then it was trying to make a drastic decision. And it's like, man, at this point, I can't help you. At failure number 1 or failure number 2, your family should have been more important to you then. Your health should have been more important to you then. And I know it probably sounds harsh to some people. They might be like, damn, like that's brutal, but it's the truth.
It is.
Because if you're putting your career and your family's livelihood in my hands as someone who's taping you, you've already failed, because it should be in your hands, period. And that's whether you're military or not. Like, if we wait till we're in our 40s and we have all these damn health issues and we're going to the doctor every weekend and we're just like, man, I just don't understand. Oh, it sucks that my mom had this or my dad had this. But you chose to not produce an exercise-induced lifestyle to, I'm not saying you have to eat to the level of the cleanest eaters out there, but like at least make conscious decisions. Because when your kids are overweight, and I probably get yelled at by some parents here, but like if your kids are overweight, then that's your fault as a parent because you're setting the standard for them, right? And I'm gonna be honest, man, I love food, but so I know I can't outwork a bad diet, and I'm just as guilty as anybody. But at the same time, I'm aware of what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm aware that, okay, I've gained a little bit of weight again. I got to get my act together, get my shit together, get back on track. But I also try to keep people in my life that hold me accountable, you and other people like that I can be like man, I got to stop doing this, or I got to get back on track and keep grinding,
Yeah. It's challenging because the Navy is one of those cultures where it is a big organization. And because you're part of a big organization, so you have a lot of accountability and responsibilities just naturally by default. But that sometimes distances yourself from having personal accountability and personal responsibility for things just because, like what you said, well, I have this, this is my third PRT failure, bro, you can't fail me. And you just, like you said, well, why didn't you think about that before this moment? Why didn't you think about this? Like, this isn't my fault. This isn't my stress. But I think a lot of what we were just talking about earlier, that's kind of the culture of the Navy and kind of promotes distancing of that personal responsibility and by default blaming the system or blaming someone else, when in all reality, no one told you to eat those California burritos at 2 a.m. in the morning. No one told you to drown yourself in beers when you got off of work. No one told you to do all these things or spend all your money at the Navy Exchange and buying snacks or at the snack bar. Like, no one told you to do that. You chose to do that. And it's crazy on how many different excuses we'll make, like, well, my mom's dying or this is dying or I'm stressed. Like, yeah, those things might exist, but at the end of the day, you are still responsible for yourself, regardless of what you're going
through. Yeah.
All right. Well, go ahead.
Oh, my bad. So,
no.
I think that, even for someone that's listening to this that's not part of the military or has never even thought about it being something that they wanted to be a part of, I think one benefit, and I've had some negative things to say, obviously, about the Navy today, but I think one benefit is the fact that it is prevalent in what we do, right? There still is a standard. I don't know of many companies out there that are doing height weight tests on their employees and making them do fitness tests. And obviously we're different, right? As a military member, there's a standard. And one of the things I thought of earlier, and I wanted to just touch on it real quick, for anyone who serves or is thinking about serving, you have to look at it from this perspective, especially for us going out to sea, right? One of the most dangerous things we encounter out to sea on board a ship is a fire or flooding or anything like that, right? It's not necessarily getting into combat or fighting people. It's just the nature of the industrial environment that we work on. You being a nuke, I mean, you knew that. Like, it's just a daily fact of life. And when you look at, something as simple as your weight, okay? Let's just put this in a scenario where something happens to the ship, you're on a smaller ship, whatever the case may be, and you take on water, you're flooding, or, you're having to go in, and anyone who's been on a ship understands how small some of the hatches and little scuttles and things like that we have to crawl through can be. And I've always thought about this. And one reason why I always wanted to stay physically fit while serving, especially out to sea, is, am I going to be a liability for somebody else and myself if I can't fit through that damn hole? And it comes down to me being able to save my life or someone else's life if the ship's taken on water or something like that. And I know it's kind of a drastic scenario, but, you look at it from, if I'm physically in shape, right, to the very best of my ability, and we go into a casualty situation or a fire or an emergency situation, and I look at it from a fire team perspective too. Will I be fit enough to be able to go in and out of that place to save as many people as possible? Will I be fit enough and have the aerobic capacity to utilize less air on a fire tank, on an SCBA for firefighting than the person next to me because I'm having to go up and down ladder wells? And if you're a firefighter or anything like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The more out of shape you are, the more air you're sucking down. Typically, those things have like a 45-minute time limit?
Yep, 45 minutes.
That fire could last hours.
Mm-hmm.
So am I going to be more of a liability if by the time I get there, 10 minutes in, I've already used 30 minutes of my air? Because now I can't stay on scene to fight the fire with everybody else. Now, if something happens, I don't have the air to save my buddy. or myself, right? So, I understand why we foster PT as something that everyone needs to have a standard for, because the environment that we work in is different than the general person, But anyone who's interested in this or thinks about it being a possibility, like, look at it that perspective, right? At the end of the day, like, the people we serve with, we hope that they'd be willing to save our life just as much as we'd be able to save theirs. But will you be that liability to yourself or to them if they can't pull you out? If you can't fit through that hatch, or if you don't have the capacity to work to save an extra body or an extra 2 people, those are that person or that other 2 people that you can't save are people that you're going to leave behind. And you have to live with that, knowing that you were tired. You just couldn't give a little more. And so I try to think about it from that perspective too, my time serving, and that goes into anything, just daily life. Like, if I'm at the mall and you get in an active shooter situation, am I going to have the ability to compose myself or, run with my family and get them out of harm's way? Will I have the ability to do that, or will I be a liability to them and myself? So I just kind of want to throw that. I kind of was thinking about it as we're talking, and it's important.
Yeah, and funny, and I hate to play devil's advocate here. Well, at the bare minimum, if you're a lot bigger and you're a really big obese person in those active shooter scenarios, at least you're a bigger target to protect your family. You know what I mean?
True. True. Good call.
I'm protecting my family. I've been eating for this moment. Guys,
going grim with it to close it out. No.
Oh my God! All right, David, I really appreciate your time, and I wasn't trying to ruin that last moment, but I couldn't help it right there, man.
No.
Any Instagram handles, or do you have any kind of social media for anybody that wants to connect with you over this Navy PT discussion?
So, you can search me up on Instagram. It's David Brandenburg. Reach out to me on there, and they can get through YouTube. So if you guys can't find me for whatever reason, go through Alan here. I also have a certified fitness leader page that I started back in COVID, I guess, really when COVID was at the height. Me and another Navy recruiter, Jamie Britt, we started just kind of an at-home fitness option for people, right? Just something simple, body weight stuff to get your body going. We haven't been as active on it recently, but definitely want to get back in there. And there's still tons of workouts and different things and interviews and things like that we've done on there that people can go check us out. But CFL or Certified Fitness Leader on Facebook and Instagram. But no, man, I appreciate you letting me come on here. I love what you're doing. ShiftEQ is awesome. I rock my shirts all the time to the gym. So, I do really appreciate it and honored to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ian. And I definitely appreciate how much we've still grown together, even since I've been out of the service and away from the terrible fucking command. Anyways, all right, you guys, I need you to stay on after hit done with this. But all right, guys, hope you guys really enjoy this episode. I'm more than positive I'm going to bring David back and talk about a lot of our experiences in the Navy and everything. But thank you very much, David, and for everybody else, deuce. It can get so hard.